So for anybody who loves speed and bike tech, then look no further, because it doesn't get more exciting than time trial tech. Now, this bike here is actually the very race rig I used in April this year to 6th in the Commonwealth Games. Now, the guy who won that was Cam Mayer, a multiple World Tour race winner, and I finished at 1 minute 41 seconds down on him. Now, just for a reference, the course was technical, there were a couple of hard climbs, it benefited good aerodynamics, and that is where this thing comes into play. And I'm going to talk you through every single last detail right now. So to start off with, I'm going to talk about what makes the bike, its componentry. Obviously you can see it's a Trek Speed concept. It's a Project One design, and that's a great thing I love about Treks, is the fact that no Trek is the same and you can have a completely unique design. Now, what is on this Trek Speed concept frame? Well, I'm going to start you off with the Groupset, because the Groupset is Dura-Ace 9070 Di2, and it's coupled with a Shimano 9000 SRM. And that is a 55-42 tooth chainring setup, just for the techie geeks out there, which for time trialing is it's a good thing to go bigger chainrings at the front for better chain alignment at the back. So it's not often that you'll tend to use your 11-12 tooth sprocket. When you're riding efficiently, you want to keep that chain line as straight as possible, and that is what ultimately saves watts. So people go bigger at the front so they can go up the block at the back and, yeah, ultimately increase that efficiency to save as much time as possible. The cranks, they are 170 millimeters, and I've used shorter cranks like a lot of people these days, that I can get over the top of the bottom bracket to increase my power output and improve my aerodynamic position. So it might look like a standard Dura-Ace group set, but in fact it's not, and there are quite a few changes to this which I've made to make it as fast as possible. Now, these jockey wheels, for example, these are not your standard Shimano jockey wheels. These are in fact Gold Race jockey wheels with ceramic bearings inside. Now, Gold Race was a company Fabian Cancellara used throughout the entirety of his career, and a lot of his biggest victories he put down to this one company giving him that distinct advantage over his competition. So naturally I thought it'd be a great thing to put on this TT rig before the Commonwealth Games. Now, the chain, like a lot of other components on this bike, which I'm going to talk about in just a moment, is actually from Ceramic Speed, the ceramic bearing giants. Now, this is their UFO race day chain, and it's rumoured to save between 2 and 5 watts of power. Now, what else on this bike is Ceramic Speed? Well, that would be the rear wheel, the front wheel, and the bottom bracket. Now, this combination in total is also rumoured to save between 6 and 9 watts. Couple that together, that is a huge saving of 14 watts of power. Now, when you consider how hard it is to add 14 watts on your threshold, when you're giving yourself 14 watts more efficiency at that intensity, I mean, that is huge. The wheels themselves, up front, I have the Bontrager Aeolus 7, and like I said, this has got ceramic bearings running throughout. Now the rear, it bears no stickers, so what could it be? Now, the keen eye out there might well recognise it, because a lot of pros have used this wheel, and for good reason. It comes in at 780 grams only. It is incredibly stiff, it is unbelievably light and responsive, and it is the lightweight Autobahn. I've used actually a lot of disc wheels over the years, Zip, Head, you name it, but this thing, it's a different league. Its responsiveness out of corners, its ability to climb. I mean, like, this thing is lighter, in fact, than some spoked climbing wheels out there. That just shows the level that this thing operates at. So for the Commonwealth Games being a really tough course, and there being some really, really steep climbs in it, this was the perfect wheel for that. So inside the wheel itself, I have an 11-speed free hub with an 11 through 28 Dura-Ace cassette. Super light, so for a bike which is having to go up hills quick, every weight saving that I can possibly get is going to be a benefit. For the tyres, I run Vittoria Corsa G Plus 25mm. Now these have got great puncture protection thanks to the graphene in it. It's a super slick tread, it's super quick, and it's very, very stable in the corners. Now I also ran these tyres on my road racing bike for the road race at the games as well, so they are a superb all-round tyre, and they fit perfectly with the profile of the wheel as well to make the whole thing as aerodynamic as possible. So the seat post and saddle combination is a very precise measurement because under UCI rules you've got to be 5 centimetres behind the bottom bracket. So for this I needed a maximum setback seat post, and with it I used a Selle Italia SLR Tri saddle, and that's got a little bit of extra gel comfort in the front so you can still have kids later on in life. So as is standard with a time trial position, riders tend to run a little bit higher in terms of saddle height, and this differs by just a centimetre from what my road bike position is at 73.5 centimetres from the centre of the bottom bracket. So while we're on this end of the bike, I thought I'd talk a little bit about this bottle, because normally bottles are actually an aerodynamic hindrance. This Elite Specific TT bottle makes it even quicker again. So the front end of the bike, this is probably my favourite part of any TT bike, and it's because there is such detail and time invested into perfecting the position of the rider, and it's something I spent a lot of time doing prior to the games this year, working with Barney Wainwright and Jamie Pringle up at Derby Velodrome. Now they helped me optimise my position, and as a result of it I had a lot of stuff 3D printed just to get me and fix me into that position which was going to make me as fast as possible. Now the base bar itself is a standard Trek speed concept base bar which adheres to the UCI rules of being a 3-to-1 bar. On top of this though, this is where it gets really exciting. The pads themselves are actually from Watch Shop. They are 20-degree pads, so it keeps your arms up at an angle to help maximise the aerodynamic position. The position of the pads though, this is a different thing, and to get the adjustability, as I said, I created my own. So if I just unscrew this here, I've saved a bit of time having undone the other 3 bolts, but I've got 8 screw holes here, I've got 6 on the pad, so the potential for pad adjustment, not just the position you're using at the time, but for future modifications, I mean, it's endless. And having, as I talked about on previous videos, this is such an important thing to have on a bike that you're not limited by the equipment you have, and you can maximize that position for your body shape, because everybody is different and everybody has that perfect position for them, and what is right for one person may well not be right for the next. So when coming up with your aerodynamic position, it was very important to pay attention to the UCI rules, and these are actually very, very strict when it comes to time trialing. Like I said, the saddle, it has to be 5 centimetres behind the bottom bracket, yet the bars, for the top of the bars here to the pads, they can be no higher than 10 centimetres. So a way to combat this and to maximise the ability to hide behind your arms, you run the pads far higher up your forearm, so you get your elbows low, your hands high, and effectively you can get a much steeper angle on your forearms to make you even more aerodynamic. So the extension bar setup is truly unique. Whether it be the carbon armrest, which is set at 20 degrees, or the aluminium base bar it screws into, everything has been made from scratch. Now, this base bar was machined by Metaltech Engineering Solutions, and they actually machined it out of block aluminium to give the truly unique position and optimization possible. So Trek offer a variety of different aerobar extensions already, but they do offer this one option to completely customize your front end and allow you to put any extension in the end of it. And that is their Trek Speed Concept Mono Link, which is what I have here. And in the end of them, I have USC 40-degree aero bar extensions. So in the end of those extensions, I have the Dura-Ace TT shifters, which are the one button click version. So one side goes down, one side goes up. And on the base bar, I also have the ability to change the front rings on the left and the rear mech on the right here. This is where Di2 comes into its own. Don't get me wrong, it is amazing on road bikes, but on a TT bike, when you're trying to maintain that position, or if you're going around a corner or up a climb and you need to change gear, not having to go back into your extensions to change that gear is such a vital thing. So while we're talking about what components make up the front end and the position, how did I get there in the first place? Well, it took a huge amount of time riding around Derby Velodrome, getting very, very dizzy under the expert eyes of two superb aerodynamicists. Now, I came into the velodrome for my first session with Barney and Jamie at the start of this year with an arguably, and you know, for a small guy, not a particularly bad position. For you time trial geeks out there, I had a CDA of about 0.25, which is all right, but for my size, I should have been a lot lower. And that was the aim here. So we were going to try and lower this CDA to below 0.2, which I can tell you after hours and hours of painful riding around that velodrome, we did manage to get it down. We got it down to 0.185, which was super, super slippery. So flapping cables on a TT bike is a big no-no. And on this bike, everything is internal except this little junction box which sits on top of the stem and behind the bars. Everything else runs throughout the frame internally, and the only bit of cable you'll see is when it connects into the rear mechs. So for this is just another thing which adds to the bike's overall aerodynamic efficiency. So not that you should be doing a lot of braking in a time trial, but braking is obviously important so you don't crash. And Trek makes their brakes completely internal. They're integrated into the frame and they are proprietary to them. The front brake itself is a center pull system brake, and it's covered with this fairing over the fork to keep it as aerodynamic as possible. The rear brake itself is housed right underneath the bottom bracket, keeping it out of the way of the wind and around turbulent air which is already there, so it's not going to be slowing you down at all. Now, like on my road bike, I run lightweight skewers, and for me it's just a little blingy thing I love. And you know what, when you feel cool and you look cool, you're gonna go fast. So for me, I run the same thing again, lightweight carbon skewers every time. So my particular bike measurements, as I said, time trial position is very, very specific. I have a centimetre higher saddle height on my TT bike, which is pretty standard for most TT positions because you spend so much time on the nose of your saddle. I have a 5 centimetre setback, and from the tip of saddle to the end of my extensions is 80 centimetres, which is the maximum allowed under UCI rules. The distance from the tip of my saddle to my base bar bullhorns, though, that is very, very similar to my road position at 70 centimetres. So to finish off with, like I promised, I'll talk about the pedals, and more specifically, I'll talk about what power ran through those pedals in April this year at the Games. Now these are Shimano Ultegra SPD SL pedals, the same as what I use on my road bike, and at that time of year, my FTP was a shade over 380 watts for the hour, which was the best I've ever gone my entire career. So I hope you enjoyed this run through of my TT bike from the Commonwealth Games. If you did, give it a like and subscribe because we've got some super cool content coming very soon. And how about you let me know in the comment section below what your favourite part of this bike was. I think mine is certainly this disc wheel right here.